journey through the faith with you. Come on, let's roll before your coffee gets cold. It's time for the JP2 Morning Crew.
Hey everyone, good morning and welcome to JP2 Morning Crew here on JP2 Radio. I'm Brandon Clark, one of your hosts, and my co-host today is John Proust, Director of Family Life and Spirituality for the Diocese of San Diego. Good morning, John. How are you?
Morning, Brandon. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. And yourself?
It's a lovely day here in San Diego. Can't complain.
Absolutely. Hey, as we kick off our show, do you mind opening us up in prayer?
Absolutely. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we just give you thanks for the gift of life. Most especially, we give you thanks for all of our blessings. We give you thanks for the gift of family. We give you thanks for the relationships through which you approach us, through which you come near to us, through which you accompany us. And above all, we just give you thanks. We praise you. We bless you. We glorify you. And we remember that all we do is for your greater glory. And may our conversation in this program also bring you greater glory above everything. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Excellent. Well, we had you on a couple months ago to talk about mental health ministry in the diocese. So in the past couple of months, anything new in your office?
Well, one of the things we're working on right now, I think that's why Jared's here too, is kind of really focused on the area of marriage enrichment. So there's a group called the Catholic Marriage Fund. And this fund was basically created to kind of help parishes and dioceses do more in the area of marriage enrichment. And so we were blessed to receive some grant funds. And so that's one of the things that we're really focused on right now. And I think Communio, and that's where Jared comes in, has just done so much in terms of helping make those connections between marriage ministry and evangelization, that they're not like two completely different arenas. They're really two sides of the same coin. So that really is giving us so much to work with in terms of our own communications with different parish leaders to help them recognize, we've got to focus on these areas. So that's an area of focus for us. Mental health ministry, we're really making some great strides in building ministries in our Spanish speaking community. So our diocese, as we talked about last time, we've really been leaders in this area nationally, but we hadn't made a whole lot of headway in Spanish. But the good news is we've got some parishes now that are moving on that. There's still quite a bit of stigma in some of our communities. So it's so important that we continue to do everything we can to make sure our parishes and our dioceses are really places where people feel free to be vulnerable, to be open, to really recognize we're at church, not because, we're all working towards sainthood, right? But we're here because we're messed up and we need that grace.
Yeah, amen to that. Sounds like you have a lot going on there, and I'm just really grateful for just answering the call to be able to work in such an important area of family life and spirituality. Now, you mentioned Jared, our guest this morning on of church engagement for an organization called Communio. And John, as we were talking, it was kind of funny. So I do some contract work with Communio, and you had brought up bringing Jared on and having had conversations with him. And I was like, wow, this would be a really great idea to have him on. Talk about, just before we introduce Jared, talk about your experience in the conversations that you've had so far with Communio.
When I was first introduced to Communio, it took me a while, frankly, to sort of wrap my brain around everything that they do and that they communicate. But once I learned about it, and that I learned that this was basically everything that they do is based on work that essentially has already been done, and they did an amazing job of showing clear stats, really, that show how their work was clearly was bearing fruit in this amazing statistic. And what was it, the Diocese of Jacksonville, right, Jared, of lowering the divorce rate by 24% by leveraging faith communities to just offer more in the area of marriage enrichment, especially focused on marriage skills. And so when you see a statistic like that, you immediately kind of go like, whoa, there's something there. Like that's a big drop in 5 years. But what's the secret sauce? What's going on here? So that led me sort of down a path of trying to get to know Communio better and what they have to offer. And Had the chance to read the book, and I'm sure Jared will share a little bit about Endgame, the book that his boss JP2 Gans wrote. That really, again, just draws these really, really clear connections between family structure. And you're not going to have a healthy family structure and a healthy domestic church without a healthy marriage, and how key that is to passing down the faith from generation to generation. So I think JP2 Gans and Communio and Jared and everybody who works there has really done a great job, I think, of bringing that to greater awareness in the church. So I think just, again, if that's all you guys do is bringing that to greater awareness, I think that's going to lead towards, we hope it's got to lead towards action when you see these connections, and it just really hits you viscerally. Like, if we want to evangelize, we need to focus on this.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and welcome in Jared. Jared, good morning. Thanks for hopping on with us today.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here. I know you said it's nice in San Diego, but outside my window here in Denver, it's snowing a little bit. So we have, it's usually good weather in Denver, but a little snow in the summer,
That sounds not very delightful, actually.
Yeah, I'm talking to a guy from North Dakota here, but
yeah. So, hey, Jared, just tell us a little bit about what Communio is, and
No.
specifically, what does it mean in your role to be the Vice President of Church Engagement?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me. It's really nice to be here. So live out here in Denver with my wife, Mallory. Works for a women's ministry called Walking with Purpose. And as part of that women's ministry, not seriously, but we have 4 little girls, all 8 and under. So she works a lot with women in Bible studies, writing some of that stuff. And then it's little women here at the house every day for us. And we met each other together in Focus, Fellowship of Catholic University students. And for me, I was there for about 14 years when I joined in 2006, when Focus was small enough that my parents asked whether or not I was joining a cult, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're fundraising your salary, you're not dating, all these kind of things. And it was a wonderful experience. I got to manage about 50 campuses across the country, mainly in the Northeast and the West. So I have some experience in San Diego, John, with some of the great priests and everybody out there. And so my background initially is more in evangelization. And this idea of Matthew 28, right, that the last thing Jesus says on earth, he says, all power on heaven and earth have been given to me, which, as some have said, is all the power that there is, right? This could be the most authoritative statement that's ever been made. All power on heaven and earth have been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. And he doesn't say just, do that if you work in a church, do that when you have a little bit of time, right? If you're ordained or something, but this is a commission to all followers in the church. And that was something that was very deeply ingrained to me and to my wife, Mallory. And again and again, we would see beautiful things happen on campus when you would go up and you would, in friendship, right, propose the gospel in winsome ways, right, in ways that, we're taking into account where people are coming from, their unique experience, and actually, developing a prayer life, developing your love for the totality of the Catholic thing. And with that said, I love youth and young adult ministry. These kind of things are so important. At the same time, the last data that we have for when, on average, young people are going to leave the Catholic faith. Okay, this is CARA data from Georgetown. Almost 80% of people leave the faith between 10 and 20, which is a lot. You're going to do something. Those are key years. But the median age is just 13. And so in a lot of ways, before high school, right, before campuses, right, campus life doesn't help, for most people. It's not helping most people in gender, gospel values and everything like that. But for most youth, right, there's something that has happened earlier in their life that's made them consider, what, the faith it's not that important. I don't want to do it, right? And that's marriage, and that's family, and that's the way that they grew up. And so in a lot of ways, what we're doing on campus is a reactive ministry to the things that are going on a little bit earlier, okay, in someone's life. And you see again and again and again, right, the data suggests that we when we work with different churches, okay, one of the first things we do is we have all the parishes run a quick survey, okay? We want to know, hey, what are the real, have people self-identify, what are the real relationship health needs here in the community? On average, a couple interesting things come out of that. Number one, is that about 20% of the people, and these are people who are in the pews every Sunday, self-report a relationship in need. Okay, and this is work done from Dr. Scott Stanley out at the University of Denver. Okay, those are the kind of metrics we're using. So 1 in 5 people on average in the pews, right, has a relationship in need. The other thing that's very interesting is about 80% of the people who responded to our survey all come from intact married families. Okay, and we've done different ways looking at this survey, but essentially what it comes down to is healthy, stable married families are kind of necessary but not sufficient for staying in the faith, right? Of course, we all know great people who are single moms or single dads who raise their kids really well, but in general, with those who are in the pews on Sunday, they come from that kind of stable family structure. If you're under 35 right now, though, it's more likely that you don't come from a married mom and dad. And so the church, right, if you just look at some of the data, in 1970, okay, about 40% of all homes in the country were what some people call a nuclear family, right? A mom and dad and some kids. But in 2021, it was just 17.8%. Okay, if you look at Catholic marriage statistics on people who get a sacramental marriage, the decrease is about 75% in that same time frame from 1970 to just a couple years ago. And so, sometimes we talk about a priest vocation crisis because 35% less guys have been ordained since 1970. Well, look, I'm surprised it's not worse, right? Because a lot of good marriages come from, right, good, healthy families. And so at the end of the day, we're here to try to make sure, hey, look, this is a new problem in the Western world, in the life of the church. There's certain things that supported marriage and family previous to 1970 in the culture that do not anymore. And the church is trying to figure out, right, how do we address this particular situation? And at the end of the day, that's why Communio exists. So we exist to equip the church to evangelize through the renewal of healthy relationships, marriage, and the family. John was mentioning it a bit earlier. We come out of a successful $20 million test in a few different markets, in Dayton, in Phoenix, but mainly in Jacksonville, Florida, where in the whole county there, the divorce rate went down a quarter in 3 years from 2015 to 2018, just by working through churches who took this very seriously. And we did a lot of digital marketing, okay, to people to get them involved with the church. Just because a church offers something doesn't mean anyone shows up. But at the end of the day, when the churches took this serious, it made a countywide difference. And another nice thing, and John, you were saying, hey, those are some interesting statistics that kind of attracted me to this. It attracted me too, right? I've seen apostolates grow. I've seen parishes grow. I hadn't seen a lot of data on countywide problems, right, that had changed that much. But the other piece of data was that the churches who had jumped into this, we tracked 33 over the course of a few years. We tracked their giving and we tracked their attendance just to see, hey, how did this impact the churches, right, that really went deep on this? And those both went up as well about a quarter over 2 years, which is just to say, right, you need to feed people. The church has always believed that you got to feed people in some ways in their felt needs. And right now, whether it's loneliness, whether it's difficulty in marriage and relationships, there's a real need like that in the country. And so we're trying to help churches engage in this in a strategic, thoughtful way.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon, I don't know about you, but those statistics are pretty stark. Wouldn't you say? I mean, not only is this benefiting society, right? I mean, the lower divorce rate, it's not just talking about Catholics, right? Jared, this is the whole area,
right?
But also the churches are thriving. So it's not like the churches are just sort of providing this, we got all these, churchy things to do, and we're going to kind of do this on the side to help society. No, this also really benefited them in terms of growing churches. So we talk about a win-win. Yeah. And I mean, I can relate just from the sense that like our marriage prep retreats that we put on, we're sort of tasked with, here's everybody from all sorts of different places in their faith, all sorts of different places in their relationship. And we present talks on helping couples understand the sacrament of marriage, helping couples understand, what does it mean to say that it takes three, right? To quote Fulton Sheen. And couples get different things out of that, right? But the most important thing the one thing that they all like really, wherever they're at in their faith, wherever they're at in their relationship, is the communication and conflict resolution talk. And it just strikes me that really kind of becomes a way in for couples to start there, and then you kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I've I've learned so much since being a part of Communio for the past 4 years or so. Right now, if you're 28 or you're 58, you're going to go to church at the same rate if you come from married, intact families, right? So the rates stay the same. It's just we're living in a completely different world when it comes to that. And there's so much sociological data on this, even when it comes to poverty, right? We've been talking to some different Catholic charities across the country, right, who are helping many times with sort of the physical needs, right, of the people that present themselves. But the biggest reason, okay, for negative outcomes for children, one of the biggest reasons for poverty is the breakdown of the family. So if you were to look at something like social mobility, if you're born to an unmarried mom and you're in the bottom quartile, okay, of income earners, on average, 74% of people will stay in that bottom quartile for the rest of their lives. If you're born in the bottom quartile, I should say quintile, it's 5, not 4, but I don't do a lot of quintiles, bottom fifth. If you're born to the bottom fifth of income earners to married parents, you're actually more likely to stay or to get to the top quintile than you are to stay in the bottom. There's nothing that predicts, just from a sociological level, positive outcomes for kids and family and society, like, right, marriage and family stability. And so, right, there's whole academic disciplines. There's a great professor who runs the Institute for Family Studies, Brad Wilcox, at the University of Virginia. He just wrote a book, right, on getting married, right, and just from the data side, right, the realities of how good that is for society. But look, if there was no sociological data, we still know from our faith how central marriage and family is, right? Whether it be, right, that scripture starts with a marriage in the book of Genesis and it ends with the wedding feast of the Lamb in the book of Revelation. It's hard to understand the Old Testament if we don't understand the nuptial way that God relates to his people. Or when you're looking at, Pope John Paul II, right? He was the priest of marriage and the family, as well as the priest of kind of the new evangelization. At least that's how I kind of grew up. I know that he wants us to go and sort of reach people in creative ways with the gospel message. But he wrote in Familiaris Consortio, right, sort of one of his letters describing, okay, the family life, that by virtue of their ministries of educating parents are the first heralds of the gospel for their children. And as much as, right, as we, I don't know, I know people like this, they want to keep their kids Catholic, so they'll drop them off at Catholic school or they'll drop them off at youth group. But if the parents aren't engaged, right, that is the most central thing. You can only do so much as the best youth minister in the world, right, to help people become saints and help people grow up in a mature way in the faith. And so, right, there's a central way that we need to focus on this particular thing, right, on marriage and healthy relationship ministry. But as it turns out, we don't. You guys have mentioned before the show a little bit. We did a little bit of work with the Barna Group, and they surveyed several hundred different churches and asked them, hey, how much of your budget do you spend on marriage and healthy relationship ministry? And 85% of the churches in the country said they don't spend anything. It's a little lower, about 82% of Catholic parishes say they don't spend anything on marriage and relationship ministry. When it comes to youth and young adult ministry, we probably spend, by our estimates, at least $6 billion a year, okay, investing in this. And look, again, I've seen beautiful things happen. I want to keep investing. The point is, for the future of our church, right, we got to even that up a little bit strategically, right, to get our marriage and family health, okay, in the same place, maybe, or I don't even know if the same place, that might be underselling it a little bit, right? But to make it at least as central as what we're doing with the children. Just last year in Rome, the Dicastery on Laity, Family and Life, I was going to throw an extra marriage in there somewhere for some reason. I don't know why, long titles. And they came out with a document, Catechumenal Pathways for Married Life. And this is a really good document. And without kind of being pedantic about how much I'm summarizing it, one of the big themes is marriage prep for a couple hours before you get married is actually not enough. Okay. I mean, this almost sounds dumb to say out loud, but it's not enough, right? To have,
obviously, right? For anyone who's been involved in the ministry, it's like so clear.
Yeah. It's not enough to be healthy, right, for the rest of your life, usually. Right, what are they saying? They're saying, hey, how do you help with good dating? How do you help with better marriage prep, right? What about relationships that are in need? How do we scale that up effectively? For us, we also like to talk a lot about a word you used earlier, marriage enrichment. You know, you can bring the smoking car into the garage, or you can do regular oil changes, okay? And for a lot of parishes, one of the primary reasons people don't do marriage enrichment is, number one, a parish doesn't offer it, right? How many parishes just kind of offer ongoing support, you know, when it comes to these kind of things? But number two, even if you offer it, who shows up? Is it just the 5 super Catholic couples that show up to everything, or who drive 15 passenger vans, you know, or whatever else? And right, and you have to make this a normalized thing at a parish, right? Because there can be a lot of shame, right? If I'm in a good parish, I'm in a small community, and I'm having problems in my relationship. We need to give permission for those who are forming cracks in their relationship to get those fixed before it becomes too late. But also, right, just because you're not close to divorce or annulment or something like that doesn't mean that your relationship's going amazing, right? And we can always get better. Just like our prayer lives, there's never a time when somebody says, hey, you know what? I don't need to go on that retreat because I think I've maxed out on intimacy, right, with the eternal Lord. And so the more that we can normalize this at a parish, right, the more successful we're going to be with actually getting people into the good things that a parish might be offering.
Right. If you're just tuning in, this is JP2 Morning Crew here on JP2 Catholic Radio. Our guest this morning is Jared Smyth. He's the Vice President of Church Engagement. And we've been talking about Communio and some of the statistics that have supported their work and really showed a need for engaging in relational development. And one of the things, Jared, that I would like to transition into is, okay, we have these statistics. They're very striking. What do we do about that? How does Communio go and connect the dots for churches and for parishes and get them not just excited, but get them committed to wanting to do something about it?
That's great. So it's a good question, right? You always, for a ministry, for an apostolate to do well, right, you have to be convicted about the reason and the need for this. What we try to do is we typically have a 4-step process, right? And number one is, how do we help a parish understand what the real needs are internal to that parish community and the surrounding neighborhood? So I mentioned earlier, we're going to have them do a quick 90-second survey. We also have a pretty sophisticated multi-million-dollar marketing system. And so we have things like data filters, okay, based on publicly available consumer data, right, for things like likelihood for divorce and separation. So based on the data from 80,000 people who got divorced or separated last year, what does that look like in your community? So we can understand the real needs, right, that a parish can augment with what the leadership, what father, what everyone else already knows from living and working there. We want to add to that so that we can come in and build a strategic outreach framework. I mentioned earlier that, right, we talk about single life, marriage prep, marriage in need, marriage enrichment. These are kind of the areas that we like to focus on to make sure holistically any parish can build out, right, at key moments of people's romantic relationships, that a parish can build out the right kind of programming. But the reality is, you know, content, thanks be to God, is not the problem anymore in the Catholic world. In the last, I would say even 15 to 20 years especially, there's been an explosion of really high quality, right, Catholic content that's out there. So the problem isn't content. The problem is typically that the content stays on our bookshelves and doesn't get to the people that need it the most. And so what Communio is really architected to do is we're more of an operating system that's helping a church offer the right kind of stuff, but then drive people, right, drive demand to the good stuff a church is offering. And that's where the evangelization piece comes in. We like to call it, just for reference, we like to call it the ministry engagement ladder. It's kind of a 4-step ladder. I like to compare it to kind of what I did at Focus, right? When I was growing up, every fall I started at the University of Pittsburgh. We'd have a Catholic rush week. Why go Greek when you can go Roman? Ha ha ha! You know, we get like a bunch of students to show up. It'd be like a wing eating competition, and you know, then some articulate student would get up and say, "Hey, thanks for being here, everyone. Guess what? Next week there's a speaker and free pizza." And you walk with people step by step in relationship to get them to a point where they're more likely to say, "Sure, I'll join a small group Bible study. I'll do a retreat. I'll join choir," whatever else it is. we help a parish set up a similar operating system where rather than just a generic Bible study, we're helping people engage in deeper relationship content that's always biblically based, right? But also, we'd highly recommend that there's a skills-based element to it. Okay. In the seminary, you might call this human formation, right? You want to know the theology, but you also want to know, how do you interact well? So John was talking earlier about things like conflict resolution, setting up a schedule, the right kind of expectations. Even if you deeply believe in the truths of the faith, you also need those skills, right, to do better, or to have a healthier relationship. I think this is an interesting stat. The data would suggest that between 8 to 12 hours a year of this kind of skills-based biblical relationship ministry, okay, that's the pivot point for increased satisfaction in your relationship and a decreased propensity for divorce and separation. It's only 1.3 minutes a day, which isn't a lot, but
Wow.
typically nobody does it. Our priests canonically have to go on a week-long retreat every year to keep their primary relationship in check, right? And there's a certain way as well, right, that as married people and as married couples, we also, right, need to do the regular kind of upkeep, not just to keep it in check, but to strengthen it as well. And so we come in, we design a strategy for outreach, we design the right kind of programmings, and then over the course of 3 years, we don't want to be a perpetual consultancy. Okay, we want a church to see the kind of fruitfulness they can have and continue to do it long after we're gone. Over the course of 3 years, though, we have consultants that walk step by step through this process with the local parish. And so, there's other fun things. We have a pretty sophisticated marketing system, okay, to help get people from the surrounding community into the church. That's part of the reason that you see a lot of church growth from this. Last year, it was 36% of the people who signed up for the church events were completely new to the parish, which is amazing, right? Like 10% would be great, but we've hit on something that's a real need out there. And so, I think not every parish necessarily is ready to do evangelization and receive new people in the way that we'd want them to. But hopefully we can help parishes take some easy steps, if they're ready for that, into getting more ready, but actually also receiving the people for the sake of these healthy relationships.
Yeah. John, as you're listening to this, just thinking about your role in the Diocese of San Diego, what's going through your mind? I'm curious.
Well, just I think the work that Communio is doing and some of the things that they've made evident really have the potential to change everything, or maybe it should change everything. I mean, the one kind of thing that's sticking in my mind right now that I think you guys promoted, or this statistic that is just shocking, and that is that the family structure of the family, like the rate in which those kids go to church, whether they're baby boomers or millennials, based on the family structure, is the same. Mm-hmm. That was mind-blowing to me, because it kind of goes against the narrative of the reason millennials, my generation, the reason Gen Z are leaving the church is because the world is changing so quickly and the new ideas out there. And there's almost a sense that we in the church, we just need to scramble and keep up and change the way we're communicating the faith. So there's a real focus on teaching the doctrine in different ways, teaching the doctrine to adults and teaching it to kids differently. So you get this focus on catechesis and youth ministry, and that's all important. But recognizing that maybe the key ingredient here is family structure. And if that doesn't get us to kind of just change the paradigm, change the shift towards focusing on the health of the family, which again is where everything that you guys are doing. So again, I think this has the potential really to change the way, or it should change the way, not only the way we in the Office for Family Life do ministry, but the whole church.
Yeah. Jared, we have about 30 seconds left. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share, and where can people learn more about Communio?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I would tell them to go to communio.org, communio.org, some of the different videos, send us an email, right, to get in touch with us, right? Those emails will come to me. And, you can look online. JP wrote a book called Endgame, okay, co-authored with John Van Epp, who's another expert in the field that discusses this really well. And yeah, just to further what you guys have said, right, until we take the marriage and family thing really seriously, everything else we do down the line is going to be difficult. So thank you for having me on and getting a chance to talk a little bit about this. John, thanks for your work in San Diego. And Brandon, thanks for helping us too.
Yeah.
You do.
It's my pleasure. John, any final thoughts from you?
No, just really grateful to keep this conversation going. Hopefully not just between the three of us, but with the wider church. So the more people that are aware of the good work that Communio is doing, I think it's really going to benefit all of us.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd love to continue this conversation in another show because I think there's a lot more to unpack. We're really just scratching the surface. So thank you, Jared. And thank you, John, for being my co-host today. To our listeners, if you missed any of today's show, you can find the entire segment on our website, jp2radio.com. Just look up the Morning Crew podcast under programming. And you can also find today's show on YouTube. If you'd rather watch it on YouTube, it's usually available about a week from now. So just head to our YouTube page to find it. On the next JP2 Morning Crew, Kimberly King is our guest. She is a 2-time Emmy award-winning TV host and media professional. She's also a devout Catholic. And this woman has been on a journey. She'll talk about her time in TV media and what that meant to her and the challenges that she faced in her home life as a result, and how Christ entered the picture and changed everything. It's a show you don't want to miss. That's all for us today. Up next, it's Life is Worth Living with Archbishop Fulton Sheen. We'll see you again next week. Keep it right here on JP2 Radio for more great Catholic programming. God bless.